Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on? Or as we would say, what's happening? What's happening? Welcome to the BirdCage LLC on the Perch Special Edition. We have a special guest in the building. So for Falcon fans and football fans, this definitely is something that you want to tune into. It's a lot we're going to tap into. So y'all sit back, relax. We got you covered. It's the BirdCage.
Okay, y'all, this is it.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? You know what time it is. You either get right or you get left, and you've tapped in with the BirdCage tonight on the Perch interview segment, so you're getting right, so you're not getting left. But before we go ahead and get that started, hit that like and subscribe button for us on the way in. We have a special guest coming into the building, but before I bring him in, we have to talk a little bit about something. We have to look at the fact that the Falcons at this point now have everybody in the cupboard, and you have to pay attention to the moves now. You have everybody in here. You had your introductory press conference from Cunningham this week talking about physicality, and he has to prove it and he has to earn it. But the only way that he can get this thing started is through scouting. I've been preaching scouting for years. So you have to understand, if you have your scout team in the proper position, scouting the proper talent, you're not going to have to worry about it because you're giving a coach that has some skill level pieces that are going to bring stuff in that can actually matriculate to get better for your franchise. Right now, the Falcons definitely need it. But hey, I'm not going to keep running my mouth on this one. We're going to go ahead and bring into the building. We have coming in here former NFL scout for the Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, and New York Jets. And also he runs a scouting academy, one of the best in the country. So please put your hands together for Mr. Daniel Hatman, BirdCage style. Welcome, Mr. Hatman. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to have great football minds in the vicinity. We do it all the time. So this is a true treat having you in the building. So let's go ahead and get it started. Go ahead and let the folks know your name, where you're from. How did you get into scouting, and did you play football coming up, and what drew you to the scouting world? We're going to go ahead and jump into it.
Man, getting into scouting, 5'10" D tackle over here, tried to walk on University at Albany, get injured pretty early on. So short, probably not that good, get injured real quick. My college career ended real fast. But I fortunately got on with the coaching staff there. They had built a program from a club team in the 60s. That head coach was still there. He loved having undergrad assistants around. So they let me come in and start assisting the coaching staff. I mean, simple things, making copies, holding scout team cards. But I got to see the inner workings and got bit by the bug. Just really liked that planning for the week and getting ready for game day, and knew I wanted to be a part of football. My origin story is a little more luck than skill. Because I didn't pick that school to get into the NFL, but fortunately the New York Giants were doing training camp there. So I was able, after spending time with our coaching staff, was able to talk to them and say, hey, the Giants are in our backyard. Like, I'd love to work there. How do I do that? And they made a call. They called over there and said, hey, we've got, Dan here. He's doing a great job. You guys should probably take a look. Next thing I know, I'm interning for the Giants. Worked for them for a couple years. And then talking to them about the career path, they were always talking about how to be a GM. You need a little more than just football knowledge, playing experience, maybe the right last name, or in this case, they recommended, get some other type of education. So I went to school to get my MBA. I was a coach ball at UMass during that time. Really enjoyed that. Coach D-line and special teams. And then the GM and assistant GM of the Jets were alumni of UMass, and they drafted our left tackle in the second round, Vlad Dukas. So I got to spend a lot of time with the Jets that year. They brought me in the scouting department. Then we all got hit by the lockout. They wouldn't extend the contract during that time. My boss called his old buddy Howie Roseman in Philly and said, hey, we can't extend this kid, but you guys should talk to him. Next thing I know, I'm working in Philly. And, the rest is history from there. So kind of a roundabout story, but that's how I got in.
But when you look at your career, and I'm going to be honest with you, there's no such, some people call it luck. I say it like this. That was divine intervention. Your life was already planned before it happened. So the good Lord had his hand on you. I don't know who you believe in, but I got to throw that out there because, again, that was the man upstairs' plan. So when you look at everything that you have going, when you got injured, and I understand this part because I'm a former football player, and I told you my story through the internet, how I got injured myself and was trying to find ways to get into the game, and I had to take the non-traditional route by going to the service. But for you, you were able to step right into being on that same team that you got injured from, and they provided you an opportunity. When you had a situation to have an opportunity, what made you choose this life and saying, you know what, it sucks that I got hurt. You know what, let me see if I can still be a part of this game in a way. What stoked your fire and your competitive nature to keep you going? Because some people would just say, you know what, this is too painful, don't want to be around it, and I'm at the same place where I got hurt. How did you continue to keep yourself going?
Just love the game. And I wish I could make it something different than that. I just really love being a part of the game. I like the way it works. I like what it does for people. I like the camaraderie that it builds. There's something about a locker room. There's no replicating it, at least in other worlds that I've been in, and just couldn't imagine a life out of it. And so just kind of fought and clawed to stay alive and stay around.
Okay. And when you got to that position and being a graduate assistant, a lot of people don't understand that that's pretty much starting in the mailroom. And there's no disrespect because I work for the post office right now and I love it, but I love the game a little bit more, just gonna be honest. And if I ever get an opportunity, I'd love to have that type of change. To be able to do what you did. But when you look at how you were on the side and you had to learn not just the playbook, you had to also learn many different things on how it works behind the cameras that players don't see. What was the biggest thing that you took away from when you were a graduate assistant that carried over for you to get to the Jets to where you learned? Like, what was the most important thing that you learned as a GA?
Yeah, I think, when you hear guys that have come up, and this was like all the guys that came through Belichick's tree, we hear it now through McVay's tree. Liam Cohen talked about it, his opening press conference. When you're just padding the plays, when you're just drawing up everything, every look you're going to face that week, right, so that you can prep for it. Every card that you guys are going to run in practice that week, everything that you think you want to put into your game plan, you're drawing it up. You're drawing it against every look that you think you're going to get, and then building the teaching points off of that, building the visual aids that you're going to bring to the players from that standpoint. All those little mechanisms, they just ingrain so many details in there that I don't think there's another way to, hit the fast forward button and skim over that. I think spending that time, building that muscle memory, that pattern recognition to go through that, and then figuring out that mechanism to teach. Like, it's one thing to know ball in your head, but unless you're the guy playing, you're delivering that to somebody else. I don't care if you're coaching, scouting, what have you. You're taking your thoughts and you're giving them to somebody else. That's teaching. So you got to have a way to do that and understand that you're going to have to adapt to how people learn. And not everybody learns the same way. Like, I don't do well just sitting in a room and listening. I need to experience it. I need to be hands-on with it. So I don't believe exposure is the same thing as understanding. I can get exposed to, how to replace my furnace. That doesn't mean I understand how to do it. So, getting in and actually doing those things, that's where the learning occurred for me. And that's what I did with a lot of the players that I worked with was, okay, yeah, we put it on the board, but let's go put it into practice so you guys can understand it.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand because I'm a hands-on learner. I have to go through it or I have to have my hands on it just like you. And that's with anything that we do now. Remembering historical fix, I don't know. That's just something I just was interested because mom got me into reading and that's how I remembered. But it helped me remember a playbook when I played, so I get it. But looking at your time, and you explained about being a graduate assistant, what was the toughest transition moving up from the college side of breaking down film and learning how players are? You're looking for certain tendencies and things of that sort. How did that transition for you with the Giants, or did you have to learn that skill all over again?
Yeah, so when I went from coaching at UMass to the Jets and then ultimately to the Eagles, the challenge became, in that coaching mentality, you have a way that you're looking for players to perform. You have a philosophy that you're putting them into. You can see the box, right, that you're trying to fit players into. And then when I transitioned back into scouting, I was still holding on to that box as if I was coaching them. And I had to work through that process. Like, you're not evaluating the player for a standard that he's never been in before, right? I'm not evaluating him for, how I would have used him at UMass. I'm evaluating him for a new franchise, for a new philosophy. And so getting into that mentality of really trying to understand the player's story, really trying to understand how that individual plays football, and not being hard and fast on like, well, I like this style of football, so therefore I don't like that player. I look at evaluation more through the lens of, I don't care how they solve problems. I just want to know that they can solve them. So my job is going in and figuring out, how does this guy play the game? How does he solve problems? Maybe it's a preferred way for me. Maybe it's not. Either way, it's how he plays the game. And that's what I want to bring to my team. And that was a bit of a relearning curve going from coaching back into scouting.
Okay. And when you got to the Giants, and you talk about it in their home team, tell the folks who the head coach was and what was it like having to transition and provide them with what they requested when it comes to players that fit their system.
Yeah, so Coughlin was the head coach when I was scouting with the Giants, and TC, he knew exactly what he wanted, and he was going to get it. I had my initial exposure to him was the year before. I don't know if everybody knows, like, Tom's daughter married Chris Snee, their former lineman.
Mm-hmm.
So the year before we won the Super Bowl, the daughter, Chris, a few other folks, like, sat TC down, or like, dude, like, you're losing this locker room. Like, the way you're being, people aren't responding to that. You're going to have to make some adjustments. Well, I saw him before that, and I saw him after that. After that, we won a Super Bowl. So that was obviously, everyone was real happy with that. But my first day on the job, I mean, kid you not, first day on the job, they took over the third floor of the football offices at University at Albany. Mm-hmm. No air conditioning in this building. It's absolutely, a sauna on the third floor there. And so they had these little mini fridges, waters, Gatorades, whatever. And, because it's a public building, they had a security guard kind of stationed at the staircase, elevator area, make sure people had credentials, right? People were on the floor, what have you. And security guard had one of those little bottles of Gatorade. He sat there. He clearly got hot, treated himself to a Gatorade. I don't think I would have blamed him for that. Would have done the same thing. Man, Coughlin ripped him, like wanted him fired, called it theft, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, oh damn, like this is real. here we go. He definitely calmed down after that. There's no doubt about it. But it was an interesting first day on the job.
And what's funny is most players that, you know, I've run across some former Jaguar players. We had Mr. Eric Curry on the show who played for Coughlin when they went on their run in 99. Unfortunately, they ran into the Tennessee Titans, God rest Steve McNair's soul, and pretty much the guy that ripped the heart out of Jaguars fans for years.
Yep.
Eric Curry spoke on Tom Coughlin, and he said it's an experience that you have to understand. He had early Coughlin before, like you said, he changed. Early Coughlin had guys wanting to give him the Latrell Sprewell treatment. Those were his words. Those were his exact words.
Sure.
And he said, but guys were afraid to lose their job and lose their money. And Tom Coughlin ruled with that iron fist. But like you said, when you look at those coaching trees, the Bill Parcells coaching tree is very successful. When you look at all the guys from Sean Payton, us as Falcon fans can't stand him because he was a thorn in our side in New Orleans.
Sure.
And then you look at Belichick and people forget that Bill Parcells, and I mentioned this the other day on the show when I was speaking about Mr. Parcells, his high school basketball coach was a direct disciple of a young Vince Lombardi. So a lot of those lessons that Parcells learned when he was playing basketball in Jersey and football was bestowed upon him, and Vince Lombardi's tradition still lives.
Sure.
And it's crazy when we talk about these coaching trees, but when you get into scouting, and like you said, Coughlin knew what he wanted. When you're in a position, what do you look for when it comes for players coming into the system that they're supposed to be in? And how do you determine what is it that you're going to settle for? And do you find any diamonds in the rough?
A few parts of that. And I feel like every answer I give on how scouting works starts with every team plays it a little differently, right? I've been in teams where we very much were in service to the coaches. We were looking for scheme fits, and we would set players aside that weren't going to do that. The Giants were one of those. Coughlin wanted big people to beat up little people, right? So we had very firm minimums on height. You know, linebacker had to be 6'3", 245 at that time. Like, don't bring me anybody underneath that. So, you know, there's players that would obviously be underneath that. You know, we wouldn't have taken London Fletcher in the too short. So, you know, there are programs that have very strict minimums, that have very strict protocols, know exactly what they want. You know, people that scout in the New England era would talk about, like, they only had about 75 players on the board at the end of the process, knew exactly what they were looking for and willing to go get it. And then I think the other end of the spectrum are the programs that probably have lived through a couple of coaching changes and they're never sure who their next coach is going to be. So they stop scouting for the coach and just start scouting for players that they like. You know, I've listened to scouts be like, I don't know who this coach is going to be in a couple of years, but this player will still be on a rookie contract. So I'm going to get guys in the building that I want. I mean, my own personal philosophy, I want that alignment. I want that connection to the coaching staff. But I can't get mad at folks that have been through, 3-4 coaching changes in 8 years and are saying, I don't really care anymore what the coach says. I'm gonna find players that I think make this team better because we keep cycling through the coaches. So those are kind of the ends of the spectrum in terms of how that gets approached. Again, some scouts stay hard and fast. Some just kind of play their own game. And then the GM's got to sort through that and figure out what he's willing to tolerate. When you talked about diamonds in the rough, I mean, I think that's what everybody hoped to find for a long period of time. That was a calling card for scouts. There ain't a whole lot of them anymore, right? Even before some of the portal movement from the small schools, the big schools, it was getting harder and harder because there's just so many eyeballs and so many people, whether they be on the team side or not, doing evaluations, the information being public, that you just really couldn't hide many guys. You know, scouts will tell stories. One of the scouts that teaches with us tells a story of having an undrafted free agent named Jeremy Urban. He was working for Seattle, and he like literally sat in San Antonio with Jeremy, like at a restaurant, and like to keep Jeremy away from the phone. So when other teams called to try to sign him a contract, like he went and planted himself to get his undrafted free agent because that was his diamond in the rough. You know, and scouts have those stories, but they've died down a lot, right? Most of the time, those players have been elevated. If a guy's really good at D2, D3 right now, he's not finishing his career there, right? He's going to be taking a jump to a big school, FCS kids, the whole 9 yards. So it's getting harder and harder to do that. I think what it ends up being is not necessarily a player that nobody else knew. It's having a player that, yeah, everybody evaluated, but you saw where his development could be and how that matched what your program is, and you brought him in and he shined. That's really what it is more of these days than it is kind of taking somebody that nobody knows.
And this leads into my next question. So for me, like I said, and I love studying the game. This is what I do. And my biggest thing is I feel like HBCU kids, I'm wearing the shirt purposely. I feel like HBCU kids need more opportunities. I understand how programs are separated, and I understand that the talent is not as abundant because most of these kids are going to the bigger schools at this point. But there's still a ton of kids that are in this, that's at HBCUs, that should get an opportunity. And I get Doug, and respect to Mr. Doug Williams and James Shaq Harris and those guys for helping put together the Legacy Bowl. But even before then, one of the guys that I pointed out, he never left Alabama A&M. I got to put his name out, Carson Vincent, who's playing for the Baltimore Ravens. Sure. Never gave up a sack during his time at Alabama A&M. And when you look at the historically black colleges and universities, and you know the history that majority of these NFL teams are flooded with Hall of Famers from these schools. And one of my favorite scouts of all time is Bill Nunn. Rest in peace.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't know that he started off as a journalist, and because of the fact that he was an HBCU graduate and was able to have feet and eyes on the ground, it was a little different. Like you were saying, you can keep dimes now because of how technology is. Yeah. But do you feel as if scouts just look at more footage now, opposed to getting in the car and really putting eyes on a guy when you talk about just putting a naked eye on a guy? Because there's something we learned in the military. Okay, the machine is doing the work for you, but it's a lot different when you're standing lookout and you have the naked eye. You can see things that the machine can't see.
The boots on the ground hasn't changed a lot. The area scouts will tell you, like, they're still spending 180 nights on the road a year, working in and out of schools all the time. Not seeing their family and their kids and everybody else. The grind in the college area scout is absolutely still there. I think what gets hard is for those individuals, a lot of their work takes them a mile wide and more of an inch deep. Not to say they don't try to drill down, but I think when you're doing the amount of volume that they're asked to do, especially with the kids moving around so many schools, because then you want to talk to the school about every kid that's been through that building, whether he's there or not, right? Whether he started there and went elsewhere, right? Whether he's still there, what have you. So you used to go to schools and, again, unless you were going to like Ohio State or Alabama, those kind of places, you might be doing 7, maybe 10 players. You could go to, up by me, you could go to Albany and be doing 12 these days. Now, you go to some of these MAC schools, you're doing 20, 24 players, not because they have 24 guys that can make it in the NFL, but you're being asked to gather information on every possible prospect. And the scale is unreal right now. And it's a drain on those individuals. It's a drain on the colleges. Like, a lot of the colleges are giving pushback to scouts in a way they haven't done in decades because they're getting worn down. You've got representatives of 32 teams, and most teams are going to send more than one person through a place. And so, you're going through a list of 20 players for 75, 80, 100 scouts over the course of your season. That's a lot of time, right? And so a lot of them are pulling back to like, okay, I'll give you a day a week. I'll answer your questions, but you can all do it as a group. And that takes away some of your ability to do really unique scouting where you can get a source and you can work it and you can dig on those things. So I do think the industry has some change it needs to do a better job on these things. And I think that, we struggle to really understand how a person has come to the place that they're at. I think a lot of times we look at the analogy I tend to use is, how did the plant grow before the flower bloomed? All right. Because everybody's got a plant growing in their backyard whether they want it to or not. And that flower, whatever it is, that thing that you can see that's obvious to everybody, that's the tape. That's the film. We can all put that on. We can all see what the player did. What interests me is, how did he get there? Again, is this one of these, greenhouse, manicured, green thumb, whatever? I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but, this thing's been brought together with fertilizer and the right light and everything else? Or is this like something growing up in the cracks of a sidewalk? Because they both could be the same looking flower, but they come from different paths. And I don't think we have the time to understand those things, because that's where you figure out the human being that's going to rise above the circumstance and they're going to make that thing happen. One of them for me is like Dak Prescott. I don't think anybody looked at the Mississippi State tape and said that, this kid is absolutely number one overall pick, makes every throw, does everything. There were great parts of his game, and there was parts of his game that he didn't have. And we knew that he was a good kid, but I don't think we were able to do the kind of work to line it up and understand that when you get him out of that system with the worker that he is, and you start teaching him some of these other things, he's going to keep rising. Dak's doing a heck of a job and has for a long time for a 4th round pick. So the league did not value him that highly. He's clearly outplayed that particular draft stock. And again, I think we knew that he was a good kid. And I think we knew that he had some good traits, but I don't think, again, as an industry, we were able to line up and understand what was still left in terms of his development. And that's where I talk about, I think we stretch certain layers of this so thin, they can't really do the work. Even if they know what they would want to do, they don't actually have the time to do it. And I think that keeps us from finding some of these guys that have more runway, because we assume that they've reached their top and they haven't.
So would you say relationships in this situation, because like you were saying, with a lot of coaches and you're getting pushback now from these schools, if you're able to have a good relationship with programs and with people that are in those programs, does that play a benefit for a scout to be able to get a little bit more extra than, as you were saying, as a coach, say, hey, all y'all come here at once, we're going to do this now, and then y'all can just get on? Does that kind of open the door?
Yeah, because if all 32 teams are in the room, you didn't get anything special. Like, I look at this part of the industry as competitive. Like, if I'm the area scout and I'm working in the state of Georgia, I go to any school in Georgia, I want information from that building the other 31 teams didn't get. I don't care if that's, someone serving food in the lunchroom. I don't care if that one's someone serving drinks at the local watering hole. I don't care I got to find a source. I got to find a pocket of information that's not obvious to everybody else in my industry, because I want a little competitive edge. Like, I've listened to really smart scouts talk about, and maybe it's not every college campus, but finding certain college campuses where there is one place that guys go out on Thursday night or whatever else, and talk to them about, like, simple things like, how do they take care of people? Do they take care of the people that are around them? If someone's, had a little too much to drink, do they help them take, or are they just kind of tossing them to the wolves? How do they treat people? Do they tip? And I'm not saying that every part of that's a perfect parallel of football, but when you start figuring out all those little details, those are things that repeat in terms of behaviors and how people approach parts of their life. And so, you go in, you talk to the pro liaison, and he goes, he came from a, 2-parent home, has a brother, has a long-term girlfriend, yada, yada, yada. All the, boilerplate, they could damn near hit a tape recorder and play. You get all those things. You go to the strength coach, and he reads off all the numbers on a sheet of paper and says, okay, this is where the kid's at. You can check all the boxes. I mean, they'll just feed you all the box checking stuff. The schools know what you're looking for. But if that's all you're getting the same stuff as everybody else. So you got to find those other pieces.
And I guess for me, because my crowd can tell you, and I know I sent you a couple of episodes when I talk about players, the one thing I look at when you talk about scouting, because you got to have, like you're saying, it's a busy competitive world, but I feel as if the targets that you really want to target or you really are trying to lean into, correct me if I'm wrong, I would try to find out, like you were saying, okay, well, his dad used to be Vietnam soldier, blah, 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 blah. Just, little intricacies about players. And one of the people that I think is very instrumental in that, I was doing it before it, but I love the fact that he does it, is, excuse me, he's one of your alum, Lewis Reddick. Lewis Reddick finds, the one thing I can give Mr. Reddick, he's going to find out at least one or two details about each player, whether it's college or whether it's NFL, when he's calling a game, and he's going to give you a detail about that person personally. And I think, and this is just me, I think some scouts, the great ones, the ones that you talk about, they know those little things and they find ways to get that information. Do you find that as more of a competitive edge, or do you say it is they're just doing their homework and their due diligence on the guys that are around?
I think the homework piece is underrated. I mean, I think when you go in and you don't have any unique questions to ask, you're not going to get unique information. When you've done your homework and you're prepped and ready to go, it's different. Like, though I talk about this with our students, because I watched that YouTube Hot Ones, the Hot Wing show, the interview show. You ever seen any episodes of that?
Yes.
A lot of celebrities on there. And this host, man, this guy does his homework, because I feel like every episode he asks some question and the guest is just like, damn, where did you find that? Like, where did you dig that up? And you just watch this guest just lean in, like physically lean in, open up, and like they just start spilling. They just start talking. And that's the kind of stuff, like, I think in this point in time where we're at with so much digital information, this mass amount of things, some of that humanity is lost. And I think when you do this the right way, you talk to them as humans, you talk to them as people, you get to know them and you get to understand them, that the source, and that led you to the player. You gotta, some people treat those sources as very transactional, like you're walking up to an ATM, right? And you just hit the button, they're going to spit it out. I look at that relationship and say, if I've never put any money into that bank account, what the hell am I able to draw out? So every relationship, you got to pour into that thing if you're ever going to call anything out.
So I'll give you an example of that. I think Mrs. Hatman has an amazing skill when it comes to sewing 1950 sweaters that your kid wore for an event at the school. I thought that was amazing. She's very talented with that. If she can sew a cardigan like that, I will pay for that.
She did too. They had 50s day. She whipped that thing up in like 2 hours. She's unbelievable.
See, a lot of people don't do homework. If you're going to have someone on, you have to research them, not just their career, but you also got to look at some personal things with that person, with people too. Like you said, and that's the beautiful part. That's the reason I love doing interviews, because you're giving me this side of it. What do you enjoy doing when you have a break from the scouting academy, which we're going to touch on, and just when you break away from football and you got time with the family or just time to yourself? What are some things that you enjoy doing for yourself?
Well, I have 5 boys, 10 years old and younger. So I don't know what this time to myself thing you talk about is. But no, I mean, I really just enjoy spending time with them, whether we go outside and throw a ball around or we play games together. I just watch some of the stuff that they get into, because I've got a couple that are like musically gifted. and just kind of watch them take off with that. I've got one that's unbelievably creative. You can give him like a bread tie and he turned that thing into a work of art. You know, I mean, just like that, kind of sit back in awe of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm just hanging with them.
And to me, I feel like that's very important. And with you being in the scouting academy and then also being a scout, how much time does it normally take away from being at events for family? And how does it take a toll on you? And how do you find that balance with your relationship with the missus and also the relationship with the kids?
I mean, I'm sure you've heard the phrase before, you know, when you get into the business, there'll be an old guy that'll grab you and he'll say, "Are you married yet?" And if you say no, he'll go, "All right, you need to find yourself a football wife." And what he means is somebody that can run the show, because you're not always going to be there. In fact, you're often not going to be there. In the season, it's, you know, I've the friends of mine that are Navy and they have been out on like submarines, you got to go spend 6 months or what have you. Like, the season has a little bit of that. Like, you're kind of off in a capsule and you're doing your own thing and they might not see you. Like, Steve Spagnuolo was our defensive coordinator with the Giants. He literally didn't go home till Friday night. He slept in the office every night. And then he would go home on Friday night at like 7 to have dinner with his family and then be back in the building bright and early. Like, there's people in the industry that do that and push through, and I'm not sure balance it particularly well. I think there's a little bit of a pushback right now. I think there's some very good coaches. Like I hear about this from like Rhett Lashley at SMU that like
great coach.
He wants to take care of his own family. Like, he wants to go home and see his kids game, and then we can finish our work digitally later on. You know, when Bruce Arians talked about like, if you miss that recital, I'll fire you. Like, I think there's a little bit of a pushback now because I think so many guys came up in this business and did have to sacrifice family that we're trying to get a little bit of that back. It doesn't always work out particularly well. Like Quessy in Minnesota worked from home for 2 weeks after the birth of his child, and that was not something they were very confused by that. Like, why aren't you in here? Why aren't you doing it? I mean, film's digital, man. I mean, I watch film from home all the time. You don't have to be somewhere to watch film. We do Zoom, we do calls. We're doing this right now. Like, there's so many technologies available that you should be able to find that time for your family, but you need upper management that's in for that.
And so you took me back to my military days because I was one of those guys that was on the ship. The difference was I wasn't married. So I got to watch a lot of my shipmates where we miss Thanksgiving, we miss Christmas, we're out. And, you know, they got to have pictures at the time sent to them. And on Christmas, you get one call on the satellite phone to call home. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, I love you guys, blah, 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 blah. I'll be back soon. Can't tell them because I'm sick. And as you said before, one of the greatest coaches to me that doesn't get enough credit for that is Joe Gibbs. He was one of the ones who stayed buried at Redskins Park back in the day, you know, listening to Doug Williams tell that story and Dexter Manley and those guys, they say, hey, when we see fog on his car hasn't moved. He's been upstairs in the war room, as they would say. That's how you know somebody put in that type of work and that type of time. So it's credit to those people who are doing that. And I give a lot of respect for you because you started to see the transition from the old school really to what it is now. So, you know, credit to you because you were one of the last of the old school ones that was trained. And shout out to Miss Connie Carberg, Miss BirdCage alum. She was the one who pointed me in your direction, by the way. She says, I think you need to talk to Dan. She says, talk to Daniel Hatman. He said, really, really good guy, great football mind. And she said he's a gem of a salt of the earth person. That was what she said about you when I went to.
Oh man, that's a
training
hell of an
camp.
endorsement right there.
Yeah, and she said, and then she proceeded to push me through the door. And said, hey, you need to talk to him about the scouting academy. I said, have him on the show. She said, yeah, have him on the show, but you need to talk to him about you possibly thinking about going to scouting academy. I looked at her. I said, okay, and she said, you break down players on your show all the time. She said, is she said the only thing you have to learn is just business side of it and what coaches would want. She had a long conversation with me, and I appreciated it because she didn't have to do that. I just met her out of just reaching out, and she is just an amazing person. And I look at how she grew up in that Jets organization, really, and she found Mark Gastineau. She helped put the sack exchange together. She had word in that, and she's humble about it. And I told her, I said, no. I said, I'm going to toot your horn because that's one of the greatest defensive lines of all time. They just didn't get a championship.
Sure.
They were all great. So for you to be the first female scout in the NFL, and you know that were in itself, she talked about some hard times that she dealt with as well. But and the other question I got for you, speaking of hard times, how hard is it, honestly, for folks that might look like myself, and also you have women? What are some of the things and the challenges that they face once they get through the scouting academy and they get into this world where there's still a lot of folks that still have closed blinders to a lot of new ideas?
There's no way of denying that. I mean, there's absolutely pockets in this industry and in many others, but we're only talking football for now.
Yes, sir.
That they're not out to find the best. You know, they just want to keep doing, status quo, just keep doing what they're doing. I think front office work should be treated like we treat in the player side, competitive, merit-based, right? Let the best win out, put everybody in, compete. A lot of times people get to positions and start to protect their little plot of land, and it's about survival more so than thriving. I think one of the harder groups right now is just people over 30. The NFL is horrible about hiring people over 30 unless they're former players. And I mean, just looking at some of the students that we've had, I find a lot of our best students to be over 30. And I think there's just something about living life. I think there's something about having different circumstance. I think there's something about gone through the ups and the downs, and you look at life and understand there's nuance and there's shades of gray, and you just can kind of cut through the crap a little easier than when you're young. When we're young and a little naive and kind of think the world's a certain way, and then you go live in the world and you're like, oh shit, okay, a little different than I thought. So I like people that have life experience. I like people that have experience outside of football. I like people that bring different backgrounds and skill sets. Like I would want a front office to have such a diverse group of voices that can talk about those things. So when we're talking about someone coming from a particular lifestyle, you mentioned like dad was a vet potentially of a player. Well, do we have anybody in the room that grew up as a military brat? Like, can you talk to us about that? Can you help us understand that? Like, if you're going to talk about these players or staff or coaches or whoever, I think a lot of assumptions get made, right? I think that's part of where your question is going. I think assumptions get made about who people are and how they're going to operate and what they're going to care about and how they're going to carry themselves. And why are we doing that? Like, just spend time with them, right? Just come to understand who they are. Because I've had students come through, age, race, gender, all of it, top to bottom. And we've had former players come in and suck in the class. We've had people that never put pads on a day in their life be amazing. We've got multiple women in the NFL that are alums who are crushing it. Others that didn't do so well. Like every group has people that have thrived and those that don't. So the idea that you would discount an entire group for something arbitrary for these assumptions is just prejudice. It just doesn't make any damn sense.
And I ask that because we see that in many avenues of the NFL. Not saying, and it's not everybody, but we've seen that with certain things. But and I tell people all the time, I say, hell, you can look at the Washington Commanders. Well, I'm gonna say Redskins because at the time they were. George Preston Marshall had to get a legal act to bring in and integrate that team. And Bobby Mitchell, God rest his soul, he said he was just like, I didn't want to leave Cleveland, but he did what he was asked to do. And the funny part about it was he was rewarded because, like you said, after he was a player, he became a scout. He moved up in their franchise. Him, and then he had a Bobby Beathard with him, and he helped build some of those championship teams in Washington. But like you said, sometimes you got to experience some of that to really say, okay, well, you might feel this way, but I still know this game. Just give me an opportunity, not a handout. And I look at people like that, Miss Carberg. I look at so many of these scouts and people that have been in positions to where life might have been a little different for them coming in. So when you look at it, I think it's beautiful that you guys have the scouting academy and you guys open it up. And like you say, you don't promise anybody anything. It's like, look, we're here. You got the opportunity. You take it, because like you said, you're not starting off in the NFL. You got to start off in the mailroom and you got to work your way up. And most people don't understand how to work their way up because they think everything's supposed to be handed to them, and it doesn't work like that. So in getting to the scouting academy, can you tell the folks a little bit about the Scouting Academy and what it does and how it preps scouts for moving up from college to the CFL, to the NFL, and even D2, D3? How do you guys prepare people, and when did you guys get the Scouting Academy started?
So we are almost 14 years old at this point, and this was an apprenticeship program I pitched at the Eagles. So that was my third NFL team. I'd been with 2 college programs, and every place wanted to hire people that knew what to do. But the only place to learn what to do was with a team. So it created this chicken and egg problem. Like, how am I supposed to learn to do this job so that you'll hire me to do this job if I don't already have the job? Like, it didn't make any sense. And I broke out how we'd bring people through and how we'd rotate them through departments and what we'd educate them on and how we'd test them through things, and I wrote this whole plan. But by the time I wanted 8 people, 4 new people a year, 2-year deals. Again, I had this whole thing spec'd out, desks, computers, everything needed to make this thing operational. It's about a $450,000 ask. And I don't want to say I got laughed out of the room, because they didn't laugh, but I didn't get a lot of smiles, and there was no nods, and there was no agreement there. But I knew there was something there. Like, I knew that this space needed a place, like so many industries have, to learn, right? To get a handle on the hard skills and the soft skills needed so that when you get your shot, you can thrive. And we don't look at what we do as a replacement for working in football. We look at it as, when you get your shot in football, that you can crush it, right? Because that's what you want. You may only get one. So I don't want to get in and then barely keep my head above water, right? I want to get in and hit the ground running and make an impact. And that's what we want to help people do. And so again, we've been 13 years now. We're in our 39th semester, I think it is. We've worked with a lot of amazing people. We've had 91 folks that have gone on to work in the NFL, hundreds that have gone on to work in college. We've got people that are in media, agents. We've got fantasy football writers. One of my favorite students ever was a 62-year-old pediatric surgeon, and he didn't want to work in football. He just wanted, when his boys came over to watch the game on Sunday, that he could school them. So he took the class just so he could be smarter than his sons on game day. So like I said, we've worked with so many different backgrounds, and whether you've played, not played, like, know a little ball, know a ton of ball, we've helped you go from wherever you're at to that next step. So it's been a really fun. I get to coach scouting. There's nothing better.
What's the biggest joy that you take from being in this scouting academy, and what is the biggest reward that you have when you actually see your students succeed, or you touch lives in a way where you haven't before?
That phone call, man, there's nothing like that phone call. You pick it up and they're just like, Dan, I just got my job with the Ravens. Like, thank you. There's just no replacement for that, when you can watch that person's life materially change, when you've watched them grow and develop, and you've seen the skill set, and now a team has come to see it as well and gravitate towards them. We've got an alum. He just went with Harbaugh to New York, but really, really bright young man, had been in school on the data side, but he came into the class, man. He fell in love with the X's and the O's. Decided he wanted to go into coaching, so that's where we worked with him on. And I got a call from my old boss with the Jets, Scott Cohen, who was there, and he's like, Dan, we're going to have this fellowship. Do you have anybody? It's going to be a little data and analytics driven, but we want them to interface with the coaching staff. And I was like, yep, I know the guy, and put him in, and when I get that call back from both of them, I think it was in the next week or two, like, yep, he's in. Last year he was a defensive quality control for them, and just watching those kind of progressions, man, there's nothing better.
Okay. And that right there is amazing when you say and the thing is you get that phone call, but on the other hand, when you have people that are looking for a lifeline, or they're trying to, no matter what the situation is, but more so where you got people that's hungry, just like these players that they're trying to find, and you have people that are crushing it. What separates the scouts that you work with opposed to some of the people that come from different backgrounds, or they might come through the ranks like you did and didn't go to an academy, and they pretty much were towel boys or towel girls, water boys or water girls? What makes it a little bit different coming through the academy opposed to just coming up through the ranks as a GA?
I mean, again, you're going to learn about parts of football in any one of those. I think what is different with what we do than coming up other places is every team I was with, clearly the organization had a ton of football knowledge in that building, right? The football knowledge was all there. The question was, were they going to spend time giving it to me? And I was fortunate to have someone like Louis Riddick when I finally got to Philly, and we just connected, and he was willing to leave his door open, and I could go in anytime, bring my questions, pick his brain, debate the hell out of him. I mean, we would have just long drawn out fights, and he'd bring film and argue his point, and I'd bring film and argue my point. We'd go back and forth and find the middle ground. And but that was not a systematic development. Like, that just happened to be somebody that him and I vibed, and off it went. Other teams I was with, I had people that that took care of me, but didn't necessarily pour into me, and that you kind of had to learn on your own through osmosis and kind of figure out all those pieces by yourself. And I'm not opposed to people learning stuff on their own by any stretch of imagination. I think we all do that at parts of our lives. But man, to have somebody that's going to be there and give you feedback all the way through the process, and be there to talk about every question that you have and help you find a resource and help you find a better way to make this argument, or have you thought of this angle, or what have you. That's what we want to do for people, is just be with them on that entire journey and pour in the whole way, so we can help them elevate their game.
So when you make recommendations, if you do make recommendations for people, what is it that you look for when it comes for the person that's coming, that is groomed under you and they've been marinated in your stock? What do you look for to put that person into a situation to where you set them up to where, hey, you got an opportunity, it's on you now? What do you look for before you put that person into that spot to shine?
Yeah, I mean, when a team calls and says we're going to have something, like I'm working with 2 colleges right now that have different opportunities. We're helping them get some people. I understand that I've got a chance to impact lives, and I want to impact those lives, but I also have to make sure that team is getting somebody that's really good. Because if I give them somebody that's less than, they're never going to knock on the door again. And I want to keep that pipeline open, right? That's how I get more people into the industry. So part of the things that we're looking for, you need people that can manage their time. It's one thing to know the game. It's another thing to do this work. Because again, there's just so many players. There's always somebody else to watch. There is always something else to do. I use the analogy of like you're on a hamster wheel, man. You're just running. You might not even go anywhere, but you're just running. You're always doing something. So to get, to have the ability to work through that, you got to be able to manage your time. You do have to have passion. You do have to have work ethic, all those things you've heard people talk about. Some of the things that I look for are problem solving abilities. Like I want to see somebody take a situation, a problem they're facing. I want to see them try to solve it. And then I want them to bring me what they tried and what they found and talk about it, whether it worked or it didn't work, right? Because when people don't ask any questions, they don't ask for help, they don't get engaged, there's a limit to their growth, right? They're not out using the resources. They're not taking in everything they can from the world around them. And I'm not looking for people to go out and solve every problem on their own. I want to see the process where they said, okay, here's what I'm facing that I don't understand. Here's steps I tried to put things into this process to make it better. I'm still not there. Like I'll tell you one, it was with Riddick. We're watching, I got assigned a guard, a college guard. And we had Howard Mudd as our offensive line coach. So think of guys that look more like Jason Kelsey. Okay. We wanted the real quick, fleet of foot dudes, right? So I'm watching this guard and I'm watching some early season tape and he's flying, right? And one of our big things was getting to the second level and occupying backers, right? So I'm watching this guy and he is getting up there and he is covering up backers and it's going well. You keep watching tape. You watch tape for the middle of the season. You watch tape from later in the season. We get to later in the season, you're not getting to those linebackers anymore. They get on the injury stuff, right? It's the first thing your head goes to. Okay, maybe he's dinged up. No missed practice time that we can tell. No missed game time that we can tell. No limp, no extra spat, nothing we can use to, okay, what the hell's going on here? I'm watching. I'm trying to solve this thing and I'm looking at all these different angles or what have you. And finally I took all that. Okay, here's the problem I'm running into. Here's the things I'm looking at. Here's where I'm trying to go with this. And I bring it all to Lou. I'm like, hey, can you watch this guy with me? Can you help me figure this thing out? He's like, sure. So we put on the early season tape, watch somebody. He goes, okay, I see what you're seeing. I'm like, okay, now watch this later in the season tape. All right. Now watch him try to get to the backers. He goes, I see you. He's not getting there. I'm like, okay, what do you think is different? Like I tell him all the research, all the things I tried to figure out with the injuries and everything else. He goes, come here, let's go back to that early season tape. Put it back on. He goes, I'm pretty sure it was a left guard. He goes, look at that left tackle. Okay. Because what number is he wearing? 72. Okay. Come here. Let's watch that later season tape. Okay. Look at that left tackle. All right. What number is he wearing? 77. It's a different cat. Watch your guy work with that tackle, and then let's go back and watch him work with the early season tackle. My guy wasn't getting off the blocks later in the season because that tackle couldn't take over the block for him to leave. That tackle was a slug. There was no chance for that guy to leave. And I couldn't find that piece. I'd gotten locked in. I was only watching the left guard. I'd gotten tunnel vision and I'm looking through all these angles and I'm trying to solve this problem. And when you do that kind of work and you bring it to someone who's invested in you and you lay out, here's all the stuff I'm trying. What am I missing? And they can help. Boom, like that, right? That they can help you connect those dots right there. I'm like, of course, I get it. My guy didn't change. His situation changed. And that made all the difference in how I put the rest of my report together. And those are kind of things that again, I think we tend to, want to pick people that remind us of ourselves, but I like people that want to work on problems. I like people that want to look for the root cause and not just stay surface level. Just telling me that, well, he got to the second level or he didn't get to the second level. That's not hard to figure out. It's right there in the film. Anybody here in the chat, we can pull up the film and I could ask you, did he get to the linebacker or not? It'd be a yes or no, and everybody could get that right. So that to me is not scouting and evaluation work. Scouting and evaluation work is saying, okay, he got there or he didn't get there. Why? And figuring that out.
kind of like being in English class, the what, when, where, and how. Just pretty much putting it that way. And for those in the chat who don't know who Howard Mudd is, Howard Mudd's one of the greatest offensive line coaches that ever coached in the game. 38 years in coaching, one Super Championship. But if you really want to dig into it, go back to his playing days. 49ers and Bears. Howard Mudd also was one of the best, and unfortunately, his career was shortened by injuries.
Horrible injuries.
So, horrible injuries. A knee injury ended the rest of his.
And his back was, he walked with a cane and a hunch for most of his life. We lost Howard in a motorcycle accident, which doesn't surprise anybody that got to know him, because Howard loved riding his motorcycles. It was the only time he could actually move well and feel free. He would go on epic rides, him and Jim Washburn, enemies between the Titans and the Colts, but became best friends. They would go on these epic rides and what have you. So it's kind of like this bittersweet, like Howard going out on a motorcycle. You hate to lose him, but if you're going to lose him, that's the way to lose him.
And if you didn't know, and also most folks don't know that he was a 2-time All-Pro and a 3-time Pro Bowler in his career. So like I said, when I say I'm a historian of the game, I know about the great players and people that don't talk about the good players. And you know, when you look at the game, you have to look at it from, and this is the thing that drives me nuts. And I don't know how you feel about this, but everybody's like, oh, well, don't nobody care about those old players here. You don't understand the game because you don't know where it started. A lot of everything that was started back in the day, yes, the game has changed because it's more of a passing game, but the fundamentals are still the same. Block, pass, tackle. You just add plays in there, but the fundamentals are still the same. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is jerseys and players.
No,
people don't get it.
You talk about the history piece. I got to give a plug, if you don't mind. A guy named Ken Crippen's got a organization called the Football Learning Academy. He is writing a book right now on the history of scouting. And if you go on his social media feed, he is doing excellent bios of legendary scouts. Like he just did, I think it was Milt Davis yesterday. Just eye-opening stuff to help people understand how the profession came to be. So shout out to Ken and the great work that he's doing.
I gotta find out where I can get that book, because 2 scouts that I've been the most interested in, really 3. Al Groh is one. Like, a lot of people know him as a coach, but he's responsible for helping draft Lawrence Taylor because he coached him in college. But a lot of folks don't know it unless you really are a Giants fan and you really understand who Al Groh is. And then, you know, and people don't realize this. Our general manager was coached by Al Groh at the University of Virginia. Ian Cunningham. And a lot of folks don't even know that. You know, a lot of Falcon fans just know that he was an old lineman. But here's the thing. You had another coach that influenced him that came from that Parcells tree. So, again, when you sit back and you look at it, Al Groh is one. The other one is Lloyd Wells, the legendary Kansas City Chiefs, not only photographer from Muhammad Ali and the Chiefs, he also was a scout, an area scout and a national scout for the Chiefs at that time. And again, when you look at the guys like Otis Taylor that played for him, rest in peace to Mr. Frank Pence, the Southern University. I rocked with Southern University, by the way. Southern University legend who just passed, who's a Super Bowl champ, rest in peace. And you look at, like I said, when you look at these guys and you look at what they've brought to the game and how it wasn't conventional during the time that they were doing it. A lot of them were working for newspapers or they were photographers, and they were bringing names to the organizations and, you know, getting a little money here and there, but it's not like it is now. So different. And Bill Nunn tells that story of working for the Pittsburgh Carrier. And he wasn't just covering football. He also was covering the Homestead Grays, covering the Negro Leagues back in the day before it ended. So it's so much that we can get into and continue the conversation, but I want to be very, very cognizant of your time. I appreciate you for coming through for an interview with us today and just telling your story and just giving the folks just inside information. We got to get you back in here because we really wanted to talk a little Falcon football with you and just what would you be looking for? You know what? I'm going to ask one question. It's my show.
Sure.
Time consumed, just one question, and then I'm going to let you go. When you look at the Atlanta Falcons and everything that we have here, and you look at I've been saying I feel like the offensive line depth has been awful for us, and it's been a piece that's been an Achilles heel. How do you think the Falcons can fix this offensive line to help a Michael Penix Jr. Stay upright and stay healthy and keep Bijan Robinson from suffering the same fate? So, how do you feel the Falcons can improve this draft right here in undrafted free agency with Ian Cunningham and his scouting department?
Well, I'm hoping Ian is going to bring the lesson that they just dealt with in Chicago for Caleb, right, where they went from that line the first year, and then they went and got Drew from y'all, right, and went out and got a couple of players at the Tooney and what have you, and put those things together, drafted the rookie there. I don't think you can overinvest in that position. It's just so hard to keep a starting five throughout the course of a season. So you need to have 8 that you can roll, and not that all 8 are going to be, good starters, but you need to have 8 guys that you can trust and plug in spots. And that's hard, man. That's hard to do, to keep that up, but that means you have to keep pouring into it. And I will say that fortunately the league still undervalues the interior linemen, kind of pushes them down a little bit. So you can still find depth throughout most draft classes in those positions and put that in, but you just got to keep pouring into that room. Just keep pouring into that room. Don't stop.
And I tell people the 2 things you can't have enough of are O lineman and D lineman. You can't, because the great Art Shell said it. I'm sorry, not Art Shell, excuse me. The late great Gene Upshaw said it himself. He said the heartbeat of a football team is the offensive line. The game doesn't go anywhere without that line, period. Defensive line is important, but the heartbeat of a football team is the offensive line.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And until we can get our heartbeat right, we're going to continue to struggle. Mr. Hatman, please let the folks know where they can find the Scouting Academy and any other plugs that you'd like to give. The floor is yours, sir.
Our site's scoutingacademy.com. If anybody has any questions on things, my email is director@scoutingacademy.com. I'm an open book, as you know. Reach out, tell me what's going on. I'm happy to help. And then we've gotten back into doing video breakdown things, getting some clips up on a daily basis on most of the socials. We're on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and what have you. Just doing little cut-ups of plays. I just enjoy doing that, and I'm happy we're getting back out there.
Most definitely. We definitely appreciate you. And I normally do a draft. I do draft shows. I do 2 different ones because, you have I do my regular draft show with the big time schools. Then I have my smaller schools, but with the smaller schools, I'll talk about guys, but I also focus on the HBCU guys because they don't get any love either. So I want to make sure that.
Well, when you find some players you got interest in, you hit me up. I'll take a look. I'll take a look.
Got a list for you.
We'll come back together and we'll talk them through.
Most definitely. And we definitely would look forward to that. And we appreciate you. Like I said, I'll email you because I got some other stuff I want to give you because I appreciate you giving the show time today. I have your picture up as a background, but I'm definitely going to have some other stuff for you too, as well. You say you grew up and worked with the Giants and Eagles. I got some Giants and Eagles pictures that I've done. So I'm going to make sure I send them to you. So thanks for stopping by today.
No, this was great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Have a good one.
Take care.
That was Daniel Hatman, everyone. That was one of the best scouts that actually was in the NFL. This man is running an academy, and he's got a lot of great gems as he provided for us today. So as I've been telling y'all, it's a little bit more to it than what you think just standing there watching film. You have to really understand looking at film and understanding the what, who, where, and why. Been preaching this for the longest, and he just confirmed that. But we were blessed, like I said, I was blessed to have former coaches to come through here and then play for coaches that played at that level where they were trained and taught that. So for those who played this game, you definitely understand it. So I appreciate you guys for tapping in with us tonight for the interview. We're going to try to get a little something going. Probably I'm getting ready to end this stream here for you guys, but I might open up a pop-up show to talk a little bit about Ian Cunningham for this week. So y'all stay tuned to that. But until then, make sure that you Hit that like and subscribe button on the way out. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe because we have some great interviews coming up for you. The next will be Buddy McGirt, former welterweight champ. He's going to be, and he's also a trainer currently right now, and has been doing that for over 20 years. But we're going to talk to him a little bit later. So please, please, please tap in with us through our social media on Twitter and also on YouTube. So as we say in the Birdcage, you either get right or you get left. We appreciate you for getting right. So let's go ahead and get left and shut this thing down. Ghosts.